When it really comes down to it, I think most success, and I didn't make this quote up, and I've seen it float around a lot. I think I first heard it from Craig Groeschel at Life Church, but it was that successful people do consistently what average people do occasionally.
Hello and welcome to the Jesus Coffee Yoga Podcast, where we spend time sharing awesome things that have helped us in our business and will help other teachers just like you. And today we are going to finish up a 3-part little micro series that we did that will hopefully help aid in excelling your business. Today we're going to talk about consistency. The last 2 podcast episodes were about clarity and community and how much power there is in those. Today we're going to talk about consistency. I want to open up this episode with a little bit of scripture that really stood out to me when I was thinking through what I wanted to share about consistency. It comes from 1 Corinthians 15, verse 58. It says, "Therefore, my beloved brothers and sisters, be steadfast and immovable, always excelling in the work of the Lord, always doing your best and doing more than is needed, being continually aware of your labor, even to the point of exhaustion. In the Lord is not futile nor wasted. It is never without purpose." So I love this for a couple of reasons. Some words that kind of just were highlighted for me throughout this text. And I actually looked up several different versions of this same passage and just kind of compared them side by side. And these 3 words just kept being in so many different versions and translations. The first one was steadfast. The next one was unmovable. And the last one was excel. And I really love this because I believe this is kind of the meat of your work, of what we do. It's one thing when we have the vision and we tell all the people and we get all the people to help us bring this vision to life. But what happens whenever we sit down at our desk or step onto that mat to teach our classes? I believe that we have to definitely have that steadfast, that sense of continuing forward, doing the work that we're called to do. We have to be unmovable. Like, life is going to happen. Business is going to change. Algorithms are going to change. We have to be unmovable and secure in the work that God has called us so that we can excel. So that's what we're going to talk about. So hopefully in the last couple of pods, you've gotten you've gotten clear about what you want to be true. You've started strategizing about how to make that come to pass. And hopefully you've even plopped yourself into some community to support that. And the final and most important part of this is consistency. So raise your hand if you're already feeling convicted like me, or even just a little doubtful around this. So let's talk about it.
But first, I want to say, a lot of times we want just human nature. We want to know, like, what's the secret? What's the hack? What's the tactic? Like, what's the special sauce that someone else has? I see they have success and I want that for me, or whatever it is. And when I say success in any of these things, it's whatever success is for you. So hopefully you have clarity around what success is for you. But whatever that is, we often want, like, what's the secret? What's the hack, right? But a lot of times there is no secret. There is no magic bullet. There's no easy button. A lot of times you actually already know what it is you should be doing, and you're just not doing it. So what is that for you? What are some things that you know you should be doing, but you're not? And if you're not sure, like, spend some time thinking about it. If you're not happy with where you are, if there's something, some discontentment, and I think there's holy contentment, and I think there's actually holy discontentment, that maybe you're just not doing what you really feel like you should be doing. You're not who God created you to be, or maybe, you're somewhere on that journey. We all are, let's be honest. Like, we never arrive, but there's a part of me that's like, God, help me be the man that you created me to be. I'm not there yet. And a lot of that revolves around me doing some things that I'm not currently doing, or maybe to stop some things that I am doing that are getting in the way. And when it really comes down to it, I think most success, and I didn't make this quote up, and I've seen it float around a lot. I think I first heard it from Craig Groeschel at Life Church, but it was that successful people do consistently what average people do occasionally. And let that sink in. Successful people do consistently what average people do occasionally. And I think you can look at things like fitness as a really easy example, where you see someone who looks really fit, like they really take care of themselves. Do you think that they have some magic secret that they don't have to do a whole lot of work and they just look like that? Or sometimes we'll have these excuses like, oh, it's genetics, they were just born that way or whatever. Oh, that guy takes steroids and that's why he's so ripped. Well, side note, even if you use steroids, you still have to do the work and work out like crazy. So all that to say, a lot of times we want the thing without putting in the work to get the thing. And I have a couple quotes prepared. There was one by this guy. He was a professional baseball player named Barry Larkin. He put, "What people don't realize is that professionals are sensational because of the fundamentals." And another guy, Jim Rohn, who's kind of like one of the fathers of business self-help kind of stuff, motivational kind of stuff. He said, "Success is neither magical nor mysterious. Success is the natural consequence of consistently applying the basic fundamentals." And so, like, back to fitness, can you really expect to work out like once a month and go crazy and do an amazing workout, 3 hours, and then the rest of the month slack off? No, you're just going to hurt really bad for the next 3 or 4 days. And then you're going to like fall off the wagon and not do it. And like, if you're not fit, maybe that's what's going on right now. Where do you see success? It's just showing up every day and doing a little bit more. So if you haven't been working out for a while, how about you just start walking? How about you just start with something small and manageable and do that consistently? And over time, you're going to see results. And I think that applies to everything, like your diet. Can you expect to eat super duper healthy one day a week and the rest of the week slack off and eat like crap? No, you're going to feel like crap most of the week. You have to eat well most meals. You can have a couple cheat meals, whatever, but it takes the consistency. It's consistently doing those little things that make a big impact over time. And
Hey,
I
really
saw,
quick,
yeah,
I want to actually define, like while you're talking about this, I want to define consistency. So I looked it up and it says the definition of consistency is conformity in the application of something, typically that which is necessary for the sake of logic, accuracy, or fairness. And I just like, I don't know why that like stood out so much to me, because I think sometimes we do have to conform to some of the things in our output to see our business grow, to see ourselves grow, our physical. I mean, you're talking a lot about physical fitness and things like that right now, but in our business, like we have to conform to some of these things. We have to subscribe to this thing and then apply it. And we have to apply it. So what we know to be true is that people with email lists tend to have more successful business for obvious reasons. Like if you have a nice, healthy email list and you're sending out valuable content and all the things to your people, but the emails just don't send themselves. And so I'm using that as an example because that's something that I have not conformed to or subscribed to in my personal business, like my personal brand. And that's something that I am. But all that to say, like, it's the consistency. Like you send out that one email and like one person might read it, like your mom who just signed up for fun, but it's like, but then you just keep doing it over and over and over and over and over and over. And then eventually you have thousands of followers and you're getting a much higher open rate, all the things. So I just wanted to share the definition of consistency.
yeah. And you bring up a good point too, that sometimes we'll see people, quote unquote, an overnight success. And those people it's never an overnight success. You didn't see the previous 10 years of them putting in the work and really developing and honing their craft to then put themselves in the position to suddenly become an overnight success. And so I think it's part of that lie we believe, that we see these people that seem really naturally gifted or naturally talented or, whatever excuse we tell ourselves so that we don't feel as bad about our own situation. Uh, Instead, we need to look at what can we do consistently to build up our skills and our experience and our confidence to get there. And like, there's just no shortcut around that. And there's one other quote that I stumbled across, that the only difference between those who have failed and those who have succeeded lies in the difference of their habits. And so I think that's a good segue into one of the first things that I wanted to share to help you stay the course or to get momentum back in your business. So someone who might be struggling with consistency, or maybe you're not really sure what's going on. Some common terms or problems I would hear someone say is, I don't feel motivated. I'm really lacking motivation, or I'm feeling stuck, or even maybe I'm feeling a little overwhelmed. Like these are really good indicators that maybe it's consistency is what you're struggling with. And so the first thing I would tell you to do is identify your keystone habit. So this is something that when you do this one thing, you often do other things as a result. And for me, what that is exercise. So I find it really hard to eat well and to take care of myself and everything else that I'm requiring to like feel good and be the best version of Nick. If I'm not exercising, it is extremely hard to do all the other stuff. But when I take the time to exercise and I make that a priority, I find it pretty easy to eat better. And suddenly I feel a little bit more energized and motivated to then make sure I'm also taking care of my spiritual self, to make sure I'm pouring into my relationships. It's like it bleeds over into every other area of my life, that when I'm taking care of this one thing, when I'm making fitness and exercise a priority, I'm much better off in all the other areas. And it just feels, not that everything is easy, it just feels a little easier though to make better choices and decisions in every other area. And conversely, and I've done this several times, for several cycles where I get really busy, there's so much going on, and instead of making exercise a priority, I cut that so that I can get a little bit more work done. And do that too many times, and it bleeds over negatively into all the other areas. I start making poor choices in my diet. I start making poor decisions in every other area, and I'm prioritizing things that really aren't as important over the things that truly are important. And so for me, that's a keystone habit that if I make that one thing, I don't have to make everything a priority. I don't have to try super hard to do all the things. If I just focus on exercise, it just everything else kind of falls in line. I remember one place I first heard this, Pastor Craig again from Life Church had said his keystone habit is flossing. And he had this funny story, like, if I floss, then I brush my teeth. I'm doing all the other things. But if I don't do that, then I don't take care of myself. I don't brush my teeth, and then I'm late getting out the door, and then I'm driving to work, and someone flips me off, and I get out of the car and I beat him up, and then I go to jail and I lose the church, all because I didn't floss. It was something crazy like that. And just to prove the point, like if I just do this one thing, everything else seems to fall in line. So what is that for you? And if you don't know, maybe you don't know, spend some time really thinking through, when I'm doing well in life or business or whatever, what is something that I've done consistently in that seems to affect everything else. And then step 2 is actually do that thing. Like it's time to make that the priority. Don't overwhelm yourself with trying to do everything. Just focus on that one thing, and then everything else will just naturally fall in line. Okay.
So I was going to ask you before we move on, what are some just like super simple keystone habits that you have in your business? Like, so those are great, like personal habit ones, which are equally as important as your business habits. But like, what are some professional keystone habits that you have?
That's a good question. So for me, it's making sure that I'm dedicating some time when my brain is the freshest for growing the business or working on the business. You'll hear this a lot in the business circles, working in the business or working on the business. And a lot of times working in is like just doing the work. It's all the admin work. It's showing up to teach the classes. It's invoicing money. It's all the stuff that it takes to run the business. If you only do that stuff, the business will not grow. No one else is going to do it for you. It kind of comes back to the thing I've said before, like no one's coming to save you. No one's going to do the push-ups for you. You need to set aside time to actually work on the business. And that's the stuff that like work, like content, like coming up with marketing and messaging and the things that no one's going to make you do. And if you don't do, like, there's no,
Well, and things that like you're not going to get paid for today. Like that's
Yeah.
kind of hard working on the business and in the business. It's really hard to balance those two because it's like I'm pulling away from income producing activity to do this thing that will over longer term, like maybe not super long term. It's really hard to make that decision. So I think that takes discipline.
Yeah. And I would say if you're not sure what that is, because it's going to look different for everybody, but I would say in most cases that I'm trying to think through my head, I would say it's coming up with your own content. I strongly believe in the power of content marketing, of putting out content as a means to attract your audience. So putting time in, and there are ways to be efficient with this and to batch it, but to do this, to set aside time to actually come up with content and work on that. And then also, like, what are the income generating activities? What are some other things? One of it would be reaching out to clients and like communicating with current and past clients. Maybe it's thinking about the upcoming quarter and planning some special events or planning something out of the ordinary, or what is it that maybe needs to change or adjust. So I think it's just setting aside some time and giving yourself that freedom to let your brain go there, to think, to plan, to dream. If you do that, that adds some energy and some momentum then to the rest of the business, and it bleeds over. And it's kind of like in a budget, or with a budget in your finances. If you don't have a budget and you just spend, and then like whatever's left at the end of the month, then you tithe, or I guess it's not a tithe, then you give, or then you save, or then you try to pay off debt. If you don't have some kind of plan in place and instead do that up front, like you will not have
Yeah.
money left over at the end of the month. It's prioritizing that and saying, this is important to me. I'm going to give the first, and I'm going to save in the beginning, and I'm going to do those things up front before you spend the money. And then you can spend what's the rest, what's left. I think it's the same thing here, that your time goes this way too, that if you don't put that time in your calendar as a priority, it just won't be there. You'll fill it, time. What is that? There's a Parkinson's law, I think, that whatever amount of time you allot to something, like you will use that time. So if you give yourself, I'm going to have a day to finish this thing, it'll take a day. Or if you give yourself an hour, you'll figure it out in an hour. If you
Yeah.
don't give yourself that time to do those things, it won't happen. So prioritizing that will then lead to I think that's a keystone habit on the business side of things.
Yeah. I think one of my keystone habits is you talked about setting aside time. Like, so I think of like my days, like right now where we're at in the day, I'm getting into like my yellow zone. Like I'm still good and I'm still like functionable, but I can feel myself, like my mental energy kind of draining a little bit. Whereas like in the first part of the day, like really like 8 to noon, 9 to noon, like those are my green hours. And like if I want to produce, like, so what we're doing right now, like if I want to produce something, I want to be creative, that's my time to do it, just because that's when I'm the best in my mind. And so what I don't do is respond to messages in the morning, because I can respond to messages some other time. So I have certain like parts of my day. So while I'm driving to my workout in the morning, and then or the class that I'm teaching, I always listen to a business podcast. So like it's just a podcast that I love. And that's just one of my habits to help me become a better leader, to think differently. And then I just kind of stack it on with another habit, which is exercising in the morning before the day starts. And so those are some that I do. And like you said, like sometimes it's not just, and then I'll go later in the day while I'm sitting at the school, like pick up your kid line. That's when I'll like get back. So I have like the pockets of time where I don't need as much energy to do this thing. So I've learned to place them around. But I would say my keystone habits would be exercise, like you said, in the mornings. For me, it's better in the mornings. It's much more likely to get done early mornings. And then trying to listen to something that's going to grow me as a leader, as a business person, and just as a person. So those are some things that I do on a regular basis.
Yeah. And now that you say that, I was thinking through for me too, that having either a book or a podcast or a course, something in there to constantly fuel my business mind, to keep me like that does energize me and help keep me motivated too. So that now that you say that, that's something that also I find helpful. And in seasons where I feel like I'm struggling, I've looked back and it's probably seasons where I wasn't doing that. I wasn't fueling that. I wasn't feeding that part of my brain and my mind. And he also said
Yeah.
something too that sometimes we will avoid some of the harder things by working on some of the easier things. Like,
Productive procrastination.
yeah, I think I said that on one of our
Mm-hmm.
previous calls or just talking to you once that
Mm-hmm.
it's productive procrastination where like I don't really want to do this other thing that's kind of hard, so I'll just stay busy with these other things. And something I've heard recently from someone, I forgot who it was that it's not just about time management. What's really important is energy management.
Energy management is
And so all
huge.
the stuff you were saying is on point. And this is an
Mm-hmm.
area that I've been trying to push myself in a little bit is to
Mm-hmm.
spend a little bit more time thinking through all of the things that I have to do. What are the more mentally taxing things or what are the more physically taxing things? And trying to arrange my schedule in a way that makes sense that the things that require more energy, I have more energy to give. And that
Yes.
so for me, I'm similar in the mornings. I'm a morning person. So like I am
Mm-hmm.
ready to go. So the stuff that's more mentally taxing, I need to be working on in the morning. And the things, well, I would say the things that are more mentally taxing and more important,
Yeah.
things that move the business forward, the needle movers need to be done when I'm in that zone. And then I've got some stuff I can do, like you said, it's just kind of mindless or like not as hard to do, but it's just, it needs to be
Mm-hmm.
done. I can do that in the times where maybe my energy is waning or draining a little bit.
Yeah. Like my going back to my messaging, I also like messaging time is just when I'm picking my kids up. I'm sitting there for 15 minutes. That's kind of just my because I realize like I carry all this mental energy about, oh, I need to get back to them. I need to get back to them. But if I have like this one slot of the day where like unless it's like my husband or something that's real time that I need to deal with, it's like people don't need more than a 24 hour. Like if it's within the 24 hours, I feel like that's fair because like it just is. But that's also where I will go in and connect with my students who are in my class. So speaking of like how to like for those that are either yoga teachers, like I have this one time a day where I'll look and hey, I just want to let you know this series is coming up. Did you want me to go ahead and sign you up for that? Or, like really just using that time doing, like you said, those things that don't require a lot of energy, but hold a lot of mental weight. And so that just getting in the habit of messaging my students or my teachers, my team, whatever, during that time has been really helpful too. So the next one to help you stay on course and stay consistent is self-awareness. And I feel like we've already kind of like talked about this a little bit just with energy management and things like that. But I think it's really important to know your triggers and to know your obstacles. So like this will hold you accountable in some ways because okay, so like if you are trying to cut back on drinking, let's use that as an example, or eating certain foods or whatever, don't bring it in the house. Okay. So like you are setting yourself up to fail by putting it at eye level in front of you in your refrigerator. So know what those obstacles are. So Nick and I just talked a little bit. Like I know that after about 3:00 in the afternoon, the creative part of my brain is done. And I'm okay with that. Like I'm not trying to be something I'm not. I'm just gonna capitalize on whenever it's good, it's good. But after about 3:00, I'm just done. And I know that that's an obstacle. So I build strategy around it. So I work my harder mental work is done in the morning. My mental lifting is done in the morning. And so I know that. I know that certain triggers, okay, so just on a personal level, like certain dates right now, as I am kind of walking through this healing from grief season, certain dates are a trigger for me. So I don't schedule things. I don't schedule team meetings. I don't schedule calls. I don't schedule a lot of things around them because I know that I need the emotional capacity to move into this. So I'm not going to schedule like big work events or anything like that. Now, some of y'all are leaning towards the side of like, I need productivity to keep that mask. We'll talk about that later. But for me, like if I want to show up the best version of where I'm able to lead from, I know that as the holidays show up, I'm not going to do more work in the holidays. I'm going to actually pull back a little bit and give my heart time to breathe, give my mind time to breathe. So those are some just little triggers, but you can even keep it practical. Like I know at 5:00, if we're talking about like the food or the drink or whatever instance, like I want to have this food or this drink. Well, if you make it super easy for yourself to just reach in the fridge and grab, so like that that obstacle prevention starts in the grocery store well before you walk through your doors and you put it in your fridge and you drink it or eat it. And so what does this look like in your business? Like, so what are the obstacles? A lot of times it is not an actual thing or person. We like to think it is because that keeps us safe from having to actually face the fear that we actually have and taking the next step that we're too scared to take. I digress. But just getting really clear with what those obstacles are. Maybe the obstacles are time. If you're working a full-time job and you want to become a full-time yoga teacher, or you want to open a studio or whatever, maybe that's the obstacle is time. What system can you build around that? What do you, like Nick said earlier, what do you stop doing? What do you not do? Right. So I think that just being self-aware as a whole, knowing your obstacles, know your triggers, know your strengths, know your weakness, it's going to help you stay consistent. Do you have anything on that one?
Yeah. So, and I think too that not sometimes, I think also we should bring God into that process. If we're not sure, we all have blind spots, and there's the scriptures. I was telling Kristen earlier, like I grew up in church and I know the Bible, but man, do I forget the numbers of like, I know it's
And
in there
I
somewhere.
said,
I
that's
promise it's in
great.
there somewhere.
Right.
But you know, where God's like, search me, like search my heart, show me my anxious thoughts. Like
Psalm 51.
you can invite, see, that's why we're a good team.
That's a good
You
one.
can invite God into that process. If you're not sure, you're
Mm-hmm.
like, God, like I know like something is off because of whatever. Help me find what this is. Like show it to me. Like
Mm-hmm.
help illuminate, you know, shine a light in the darkness. And that can also really help. And you know, I've gone through periods where at the end of my workday, you know, I work from home, and like my office is like I step out of the office and I'm like I'm in it, you know, like I don't have a commute, I don't have that decompression time. And there were some seasons where work was intense and it was really hard for me to like switch into like husband and dad mode, especially without that buffer. And I found myself continually reaching for a glass of wine to help like take the edge off and to help me decompress. And you know, I think there's times in our life where we need to soothe, and like we can use things to help us, but at some point that becomes unhealthy. And I think just realizing and having that self-reflection, like God, where show me where I need to make some changes. And there came a point where I was like, this is something that needs to stop. Like I'm not addicted, I'm not like an alcoholic, but I feel like I need this in order to relax and unwind, and I don't like that. So becoming aware and then putting
Mm-hmm.
some things in place. One, like
Safeguards. And,
telling my
mm-hmm.
wife, like, hey, I really want to change this. Can you help me stay accountable with this? And two, how about we just don't buy wine for a while? So I don't even have that option. Like I would have to get
Right.
in my truck and go buy it to have that. And so it's just a good guardrail to help me make better choices.
So self-awareness is key. Okay. So I think the next thing that can really help consistency, which has helped me and a lot of people that I've worked with, is to set micro goals or wins and celebrate them. Like this is huge. I feel like the second part of that's the hardest part. I told one of my students had just finished like some program that she was working on, and I was like, "What are you going to do to celebrate?" And she's like, "Start another program." And I was like, "No, like you've got to do something to celebrate. Like that's not it, because what's rewarded is repeated." And I truly believe this, and this is something that I feel like I really challenge anybody I'm coaching or working with. Okay, great. That's a great. And when you hit this goal, how are you going to celebrate? And I make them tell me exactly what they're going to do to celebrate. But setting the micro goals, and then not only does this keep it bite-sized and attainable, because if you're wanting to work out and you want to say, I want to work out 3 hours a week. So are you more likely to work out one day for 3 hours, 3 days for 1 hour, or 5 days for 30 minutes? I don't know if that math quite maths, but you understand what I'm saying. Like for me, I'm much more likely to be like, okay, I've got 30 minutes, let's get it done. And I'm more likely to do it 4, 5, 6 days a week instead of a whole chunk of my morning, my precious green time out of, and so if you're looking at those, what way are you going to be the most successful, and having some sort of target to aim for, so you're not just throwing darts at a moving target or an invisible one that's not even there. So keeping it achievable, celebrating. So like, even if it's by the week, like, okay, for 1 week, if I hit all these goals, I'm going to X. For 1 month, if I hit all these goals, I'm going to X. So like, I'll give you a real life example. I launched my first out of state retreat. I've never done one before. I've been to one, but I was not leading it. I was co-leading it, but I wasn't orchestrating it. I just went. Right. So I did my very first retreat and it was 10 hours away. So like that just brings up like all the things, right? Like it's a lot. And it filled up. It filled up really fast. So what I told myself is once I fill this up, I'm going to get myself a hot tub because that is something that I would love to be able to, like, I don't have a bath tub in my shower. We just have a shower. And so I would love to be able to give back to myself in that way. So I set this goal, like if I fill this up, then I'm getting this hot tub. And I actually had it pulled up and I printed it out and stuck it on my computer. Like it was right there. And so as soon as that last person came in, I was like, I ordered my little, if you can't see me, I'm typing in the air. I ordered my little soft side hot tub and it was such a gift. So now many times when I get it, I'm like, this is like a reward for the hard work that I've done. And that's just kind of a silly one, but like, it's, especially if the reward is self-caring, I think that's like a bonus, but I had a target, I had a goal, and not necessarily, I just like having a carrot at the end. And I'll tell you, up to this very last retreat, and I actually did sell it out, but somebody couldn't come. I've sold out every retreat since then. So having a target, knowing where you're aiming for, and then having something to celebrate those wins, big and small, I think is huge in consistency for me.
Yeah. And
And
it's,
being realistic, I think is huge too. So you want to lose 40 pounds, that's great. Let's talk about this week. Let's start here, like realistic goals right now.
yeah, I have a couple thoughts. And so like, it's a squirrel trying to keep reined in here. But one is that if you don't have some kind of goal or target, how can you get there? There's Yogi Berra has like a funny quote, and I can't remember what it is, and I'll butcher it if I try. But like you need to know where you're headed in order to get there, in order to come up with a plan to get there. So by not having those, you're really shooting yourself in the foot. The other thing is that I recently heard someone say, and I hear all these things and I forget which one of the persons said it, but what I heard him say was, we do not rise to the level of our goals, we fall to the level of our habits. And so while it's important to have goals and necessary, like we need targets to shoot for, having the goal is not the thing that will get you there. It's your habits and your consistency in doing the things that help you achieve the goal. So like the goal is going to require things of you. And if you do those things consistently, you get the goal. But if
Which
you
is what a habit is. It's doing something consistently. Yeah.
But if you only have the goal and just think like, I'm going to set these goals, why do so many people not achieve their resolutions? It's because they have the goal and they're all excited and motivated.
They don't have the plan or the follow through.
Yeah, they don't have the consistency. They don't just keep doing it. If you just keep doing it, you will not lose.
Yeah. So it was James Clear, the Atomic Habits guy. He's so good. You guys need that book if you don't have it read it yet. It is a game changer.
So next, having accountability is extremely important with developing consistency, because there will be times where you're tempted to not do the thing. And it's in those moments when you have someone that you can reach out to say, hey, I'm thinking about not doing the thing. They can go, do the thing, and then you'll do the thing. Like sometimes it's as easy as that. Just having someone who like you really want to do the right thing, but there's just part of you that's like, you could do that, or you could just not. Having that accountability in place can be a game changer.
I want to say something right here. It is not other people's responsibility to hold me accountable. It is my responsibility to check in with them and talk about the ways that, here's where I'm struggling. Here's where I'm lacking. Here's where I need more counseling or coaching or help or financial piece, whatever it is. Like, here, it is my job to come to that person who said, I'll hold you accountable. It's not their job to come to me. like that is like dragging, a dead horse behind you. Like nobody wants to be that person. Nobody has time for that. And so, let's set a day on Fridays. We check in with each other. If I don't check in with my accountability partner, that's on me. That's on me. And so I think that we need to like kind of clear that up when it comes to accountability. Is like, it's not someone else's job to make sure you're doing your stuff. That ain't it, because you're an adult. So adult.
Yeah. And you will be very sorely disappointed if you're expecting, even in like a coaching situation, to expect them to be the ones to hold you accountable, because that's not their role.
No. And that's what, anytime I'm setting up sessions with someone to coach, I'm like, here's the deal. I will keep pace with you. I will push your pace. I will encourage you. I will cheer you. I will do all the things. The only thing I will not do is drag you. If you do not want this, I can't want it for you. Right. So I will match your energy and even push it sometimes, but I will not drag you. And you're right. Like, I think you're setting yourself up for disappointment if you think the next person or the next course or the next coach or the next counselor is going to fix you. You have to do the work. And so, your coach will kind of remind you, hey, remember you said you wanted this? Remember you said you were going to do this? Remember who you are? Remember what you've committed to doing? But ultimately, they're not going to be calling you at 5 a.m. to see if you got up and did things you're supposed to do. That's not their job. That's your job. That's our job as the person. All right. So get accountable. If you need some ways to get accountable, go back and listen to the podcast before this one, because we talked a lot about the power of community, and that's where a lot of accountability is going to lie.
So the last thing is that when it comes down to it, you just have to do it. Are
you about to start rapping right now?
I just came up with that. Like, I didn't even have that written. So like,
all right.
I'm so gifted.
All right. There you go.
You just have to start. You just have to do it. You got to put on your big boy pants, your big girl pants, and just get it done. And you don't have to have it all figured out. And a lot of times what gets in the way of this step is fear and overwhelm, and sometimes just excuses that we make to not get started on those steps. And it kind of ties into some of these other things where you don't really have the goal. You don't have some kind of accountability. Maybe you're not even aware of what's going on, or you're just not doing what you know you need to do. You just got to do it. And no one's going to do it for you. No one can do your push-ups for you. You've got to just start. But if you start small and just do what you can do, over time, you can grow and expand. And like, that's what gets you momentum. So like, quick story, in my football days, we would do this thing where we had this huge like wagon that we would move our equipment on. And sometimes we would pile all the guys on it, and you had to push it 100 yards down the field. And it was really hard. You can imagine trying to push a cart, like a big wagon full of football players. And to get it going was the hardest part. Once you got it going, it was a bit easier. I mean, it was still work, but you could keep it going. But to get it going was so hard. But what you had to do was get really low and take like little choppy steps. And if you did that hard enough and like little steps, if you try to take real big steps, like, it will not budge. But if you do this short little like choppy steps, it helped you kind of get it rocking and moving, and then you could keep it going, get some momentum. So just start small and then work your way from there. And when it comes to like fear and overwhelm, sometimes we're letting things that aren't even a thing stop us from moving, or we're using this excuse of like, oh, I'm overwhelmed. And I like to say overwhelm is a choice. And I think we need to do an episode just on that, because we could talk for a while just overwhelm and fear. But you're choosing to stay in overwhelm instead of breaking that thing down. If you're trying to climb Mount Everest, if you just keep staring at the peak and you're like, oh my gosh, how am I going to do that? Like, you're not going to get there. If you just look forward and I just need to get to this point, you can make little checkpoints and just get to those points. Break down.
I think that goes back to like micro goals, like just little micro goals, because if we overcomplicate something, then what we're telling ourselves is it's hard. I don't have to do it. Well, both. It may be hard, but we're going to do it anyways. Like, it's tough, but so are you. But also, like, sometimes we can simplify the process. Like, going back to fitness, that's always the easiest one, or whatever it is, like post for your social media or email or whatever it is. Like, something every day is better than nothing for 30 days, right? Like, something every day. And this is hard. I don't know why, as humans, I'm sure there's some neuroscience behind it, but like, just do it. Like, set an easy behavioral based goal. So for 5 minutes, I'm going to write a post every single day, whether you post it or not, for 5 minutes. And then you end up with an entire note stack full of posts. Like I've got so many that I don't even know what to do with them at this point. But when the time comes for me to share them, they're just there. I think just doing something, doing it. Just get it done.
And you don't have to see the whole staircase to take the next step. And often as you take that next step, then the next step kind of reveals itself. If you think of like at night, how far your headlights can see with your car, you can only see so far. But when you move the car, now you see more. And then you keep moving, you see more. So I think sometimes just taking that next step will often then reveal the next step. But you don't have to see the whole staircase in order to take that first step.
That's so good. All right. So to recap, 5 ways to stay consistent is identify and perform your Keystone habits. Number 2 is self-awareness, knowing your triggers and the obstacles that are around you and building systems around them. Number 3 is setting micro goals and wins and then celebrate them. Number 4 is get accountable. Accountability is key. Number 5 is just do it. That's it. So we hope that these tips and this conversation around consistency was helpful for you as you take your next step as a yoga teacher, as a leader in your business. We'd love to hear from you. So if you're not in our teacher community on Facebook, hop over to Facebook and search Christians Do Yoga Teacher Community, and you'll find us. Come join us, say hello, and let us know which areas you're finding a hard time in your business or maybe even in your personal life remaining consistent. We'd love to hear from you, and we're so grateful that you spent your time with us today.
Hey friend, I hope you enjoyed that episode. If you did, hit that like button and make sure you subscribe to catch all of our future episodes. We have some really good ones coming up. Specifically, we have a 2-part series where we're going to talk about setting goals. So make sure you subscribe, and we'll catch you on the next one.